En 2008 se estrenó Gran Torino, una película que para muchos está dentro de lo mejor que hizo Clint Eastwood como director. Una película que posiblemente hoy en día no se podría hacer. Y eso me decía el coprotagonista de la película, Bee Vang, que estuvo encargado de interpretar a Thao, que casi que en la misma sintonía que Michael Bowman de Irene Yo y mi otro yo, dijo que cuando hicieron la película no les pareció tan raro, pero cuando la vieron en la pantalla grande un poco de ruido hizo. Hablamos sobre el legado de esta producción, sobre lo que significa verla después de tanto tiempo y lo que significa en este contexto en el que hay tanto pero tanto racismo contra los asiáticos, al menos en los Estados Unidos. Todo esto y mucho más en este informe sobre Gran Torino.
We now return to Mira Akien and Contre with our latest interview.
I think it was a great learning experience. As someone who was a novice actor, someone who wasn't necessarily trained in any way, I did my best to learn through interactions, through discussions, and I think he was a great mentor and in his own way, of course.
Those guys were here the other night. What about them?
Just a gang.
Clint Eastwood has his own style of directing, I would say, that is about throwing people into, you know, situations and scenarios and getting you to organically pull the emotions out. And it's unexpected, it's unplanned, and the idea is obviously to get people to be their most authentic self. And so the first scene that we shot was a scene that, you know, we hadn't necessarily ever rehearsed. And, you know, before I knew it, after the second take, it might have been the first take, I actually don't remember, but like, you know, within the first or second take, we were done shooting that scene. And of course, you know, when I was a 15-year-old going into this after finding out that I had been cast in the role, a lot of my theater friends and actor friends who have been working professionally in the industry would say, you know, there are certain directors that will shoot a certain scene like 50 or 70 times before moving on, and you just have to be prepared for that. And so of course, when, you know, I went in believing that we're going to shoot up to like 50 takes, you know, after the second take, I was like, oh wow, you know, like did I do well? You know, of course, because like every actor is very self-conscious, and that's the problem of being an actor, is that you're just always wondering if you were good enough.
Get off my lawn.
You better watch your back.
I often liken the situation to Stanley Kubrick's Full Metal Jacket. A lot of things about Full Metal Jacket were criticizing the war and criticizing certain stereotypes about Asia and Asianness, right? And yet the one thing that sticks out to most people from that film is this really one racist scene that has sort of become a kind of go-to phrase that people evoke to be incredibly racist. Stanley Kubrick, I think, is a great filmmaker. He is one of the greats of the 20th century. And unfortunately, this film, you know, like any film, can be received in any way and be co-opted, you know, by whatever, you know, movement or ideology for that matter. And so I think for Gran Torino, the message may have been clear that it was about, you know, how we come together and transcend our differences to be human to each other, right? And to move beyond those differences and to form, you know, an unlikely bond, which was what was formed between my character and Clint Eastwood's character. And whether or not the message is something that people got, you know, I think that's beyond the point of now, which is that, you know, when I think about how people were always talking about the racist epithets and racial slurs in that film, it just really reminded me of the ways that people came to talk about anti-Asian racism in this country. It wasn't serious. No one really saw it as a force that we needed to reckon with. And so when everything came to a head, you know, at the very beginning of COVID, of the pandemic, you know, we saw everything come together, and it was a heightening of contradictions of kind, right? And so I think, you know, that's, to me, that's my criticism of the film and about how we can use that film to better understand the Asian American experience.
Yeah. Well, and since you mentioned that, do you think that this movie could have been done in a context like this? Like, it's like 10 years old, it's 12 years old. There are certain movies that maybe 50 years ago were okay and nowadays are not cool. What do you think of Gran Torino after 10 years or 12?
I don't think a film like Gran Torino could be made today. I think it's a product of its time, which ironically enough was a film that a lot of people hailed as the post-race Obama era film. It came out in December of 2008, which was just about a month after Obama was elected, which was on my birthday, actually. And so I remember that year very well, not just because of Gran Torino, but that was when Obama was elected. And, I just think that it's a product of its time, and I don't think it's something that I could imagine being made right now. And to think about the amount of slurs in that film being echoed so widely and on the big screen and in pop culture in a time when those are the same words being thrown and being used to assault Asian Americans and Asian people around the world, it just stings very differently.
Yeah.
And so I don't know. I don't think I couldn't possibly imagine it coming up now.
It's Thao.
What?
It's not Toad. It's Thao. My name is Thao.
Just a reminder that I was 15 at the time, and reading a script is very different. And acting on a film set is also very different than, experiencing something yourself. And while I did experience having been called some of those slurs and words before, I think being on set made it very different. It felt artificial. It felt like, it's clearly a film set. Like I can tell the difference between something that's real and something that is a film that is being set on a film set. And so, I think for me, it wasn't until I sat down in theaters and just really listened to people laugh at those slurs being said that I began to feel uncomfortable. But it wasn't until, then, at that point that I felt a certain way about the slurs, because then, I definitely saw what the consequences may have been.
We won't consider gardening to be women's work.
Yeah. That's probably why I see you in the garden over there all the time.
I actually don't believe I had any lines written in Hmong. A lot of what ended up on screen, that was sometimes just me improvising. I didn't necessarily get permission to do so, nor did I get the push to do just that. But that's stuff that I brought in as just being Hmong, like having been cast as a Hmong character, as a Hmong person, there's just nuances that I knew that I could bring to my character to give them substance.
What was it like to kill a man?
You don't want to know. Thao and Sue are never going to find peace in this world, as long as that gang's around.
So if you had to summarize the experience in Gran Torino, you are happy with it?
I would say that it was a great learning experience.